You're listening to Nappet, Nestor and Pilgrim in the Tumult, an altered TCG podcast. Oh no, Roy. I am sitting on the empty shelf of a cliffside bookcase. My feet are hanging over the shelf's edge, above waves that are breaking over the pageless shelves of books. Books that were the size of me, as tall and wider. I am facing southwest into a liquid fire sky, watching the sun set over a horizon which I know to be vibrating with aether, and the crane song of folded paper. You should have seen the flock tear free. You should have been here to marvel as each sheaf contorted itself into a flapping shape. Would you have wondered with me if the words on each of those birds meant anything to them? Was their script their soul in some way? Or was each letter simply a skin cell that could be shed to dust without notice or care? My hands prop me up as I lean away from the sea with some air of melancholy. I will surely tuck my wind-chilled legs into the warmth of the campfire behind me soon, but for now I let the wet breath of the earth numb them. Why now? Why did I leave my home? Why am I suffering the tumult to find Asgartha? Why am I praying to you? Because after I was transformed by the tumult, something tragic happened. The sand that was pouring from the mouth of the rammed earth statue in the tidal desert that held the tumult singularity that changed me became water after. And the sand of the desert also became water after. And the city of two suns was disastrously flooded after. My parents died in that flood. Many people died. And what livable land is left is not enough to support even the fraction that remain. It's potentially irrational. I couldn't have known what was going to happen when I stepped into the fabric darkness of that tree, but I feel responsible for the flood. I feel responsible for the lives lost and the things destroyed, including the now submerged red fountain where I planted the idea of love luck, and the other places I planted ideas too. Responsible or not, I felt compelled to help fix the place that was my home. But how? This was too big a problem to alter away. It did not take many nights of dreaming Asgartha for it to become clear to me what I needed to do. I needed help, though. So I went to Camilla's. "Hey," I said.
"Hey,"
she said back. She smiled, which was not something I had seen much of since the flood. She was so beautiful. Is so beautiful. She's slender and tall and has eyes like the sky. Her name is Camilla, and she keeps cats like a jungle keeps plants. I have been having some dreams," I said. "I met this thing in the desert before it turned to water, and have this mark on my body, and now I'm having dreams about a place called Asgartha."
"Why don't you come in?"
she said, as she stepped back from the door and swept her foot along the ground to push back a herd of interested cats and an out-of-place kitten. Minding the cats, I followed her to the chair she shooed clear for me, and sat at a table covered in empty milk dishes. "I don't think it's stress," I said. "I think it's real. I think the place really exists." She didn't join me at the table. Instead, she busied herself with cat tasks.
"What did you meet in the desert?"
she said. I took out the cracked hourglass I had found floating above my father's house and put it on the table. Puzzled, Camilla paused holding one of many litter boxes and tilted her head to one side slightly. "A statue in the desert spit him out," I said. The sand began to swirl in the bottom bulb of the hourglass and tinkle up into the top bulb grain by grain. Then it started to slip out of the crack and assemble into the hand-sized form Pilgrim used to take. He looked more like a beige fish before we found him more sand. Pilgrim wiggled as he floated above the hourglass and turned to behold Camilla. The room became very still all of a sudden, and it felt like time had frozen. That'll happen when 20+ cats suddenly, and in unison, stop what they were doing to stare fixedly at the same fish-sized thing floating within reach. Without moving, Camilla's eyes darted to the left and right. A second before the room erupted into a cat tornado, her eyes met mine in a look that said,
You idiot.
I had not accounted for the cats when I was thinking about how to introduce Pilgrim. Even after I got him back in the hourglass and tucked it into the pocket fold of my cloak, most of the cats just stared at my chest.
A chimera,
She said. She had taken a seat at the table with me, after she swept up the sand and leavings from the litter box that was jostled out of her hands in the cat melee. I don't know, I replied. Aren't chimera normally bigger and, aggressive?
Maybe a baby.
She said, shrugging. I named him Pilgrim, I said.
And he's giving you dreams.
She asked. I don't know, I replied. I don't think it's him. I think the dreams come from this diamond-shaped mark I got when I met him. I showed her. It resembles a symbol from Asgartha that connects people's minds.
What is Asgartha?
She looked confused and skeptical, but there was also something in the way she leaned forward that gave me the confidence to speak about all this like it was real, and not something born of a broken brain. I told her about the city, and the people, the 6 factions and exalts. Asgartha is a tumult oasis that holds 2.5 million people. There are 6 influential factions of people. They have different values, philosophies, goals, and alteration styles. Somehow, they all seem to be working together, despite their differences. I described the factions to her, but mainly focused on Muna, because they own the Musubi, and that is why I had come to see Camilla. Muna are all about inner and outer harmony. Self-awareness and awareness of the interconnectedness of all things. They tend to be quite in tune with nature, and I'd wager that Camilla would be part of the Muna faction if she had grown up in Asgartha. It turns out she was already aware of the skein, but didn't have a word for it. The Ordis can't seem to perform the Musubi ritual, but they are notorious note-takers. There was enough information about the Muna's Musubi in the Gestalt for me to relay to Camilla what she needed to learn in order to perform the Musubi for Pilgrim and me. I don't think just any Muna could do that. But of course I think she's special. What is the Musubi? To summarize something philosophically complex, it is the linking of your awareness to the body and mind of another, and the linking of their awareness to your body and mind. Linked beings more than know each other's thoughts. They share them. They share thoughts, feelings, perceptions. In fact, everything that one experiences in body or mind, the other experiences. This is true even at great distances, and even across leagues of tumult. The Musubi can be performed for 2 people, but when a human and a chimera bond via the Musubi, they become exalts. The chimera stops changing and keeps the form held in its human's mind. The human can draw on the mana stored in the chimera to perform feats of alteration not possible on their own. And of course, the synchrony between 2 beings is nothing to discount. But tumult stabilization was the Musubi feature that mattered most to me. When bound with Pilgrim, I knew I could traverse the tumult because he can soak up such an absurd amount of mana that he can dive safely into the gnarliest aether waves and emerge packed like a magical bomb. When we reconnect and I can access that mana. Boom. It is like planting an idea in a place, but the release of magical energy is so much more. It is more than planting an idea. It is as if I am planting my will. This will be this way, and the tumult has no say in the matter. And it doesn't. It works. It's like the aether waves are magnetically repulsed by these little oases we make, the bits of land we have reclaimed from the tumult. If the Asgarthans could figure this out, I mean this among so many things, the rampart too, and the city of Kestia, and the reversed waterfall of Kuivar, maybe they could find a way to restore the city of two suns. I think they could. So I found a way to bond with Pilgrim, so that I could traverse the tumult, so that I could bring Asgarthans to my home, so they could fix my mistake. And so I could help them solve all of this, to find the source of the tumult, and to deal with it. The Musubi ritual was not learned in a day, but after weeks of effort, Camilla figured it out. And here we are, Pilgrim and I, an exalt. The fool who killed his parents and the last spit of sand from a tree-brained statue, looking for help. From Asgartha, who are far, and from the Oneroi, who must all be trapped in a jar for all the good help they are. Why am I praying to you? Why did I leave my home? To fix it. Why am I suffering the tumult to find Asgartha? To get help fixing my home, and to help them fix the tumult so that something like what happened doesn't happen again. But why am I praying to you? Partly because I've gone insane, I'm sure. Partly because I'm a little jealous of the attention you have afforded the Asgarthans. Partly because I need help reaching them, and I know you're capable of providing the help I need, and more. But I guess the truth of it is that I don't know why I'm trying to communicate with you. I feel the urge deep down near the same places that feel empty in me, but I do not understand those places, and I do not understand this impulse, which grows and grows daily and builds up in me like a massive shout. Speaking like this shrinks the thing. So I guess that's why. But enough about me. Let's talk more about Asgartha. But first, let me fold these legs into the warmth of the fire. The sun has set, and it is cold. Okay, what have I said so far? 6 factions, the Musubi, 2.5 million people. They want to stop the tumult. Maybe we should start from the beginning. Actually, maybe we should let them start from the beginning. It's their story. And this great series of poems, written by an Asgarthan woman named Himitsu, does the job. She's the 3rd Poet Consul to Yzmir, Yzmir being one of the 6 factions, and she wrote them in response to an Ordisman named Waru, who was publicly opposed to the Asgarthan effort to venture in the tumult. They're interesting as public dialogue, but also because they highlight where Asgarthans came from, where they are, and where they're headed. It skips the wars, and Waru points that out in an essay response which I have not committed to memory, but I don't think that matters. The first poem of the 3 is called The Flood. The Flood. Do you know the story of the flood? The ancient one that covered the land and changed it. There was another more recent one that gave us something to chew on. The story of the older storm claims water filled the earth, but our storm, the thing we call the confluence, drowned this planet with aether that has still not dried away. What if water from the time before was simply metaphor for aether? What if this is time 5 or 4, that something broke the door between the aether-heaping realm of the Empyrean and the place our dry tongues are tethered to? Himitsu, 3rd Poet Consul to Yzmir, 378 AC. Public response to Waru, Part 1. Our storm, the confluence. The confluence is the start. It's the tearing of the veil, which is the border between our worlds. We still don't have a clue what happened. It was so long ago. But what it let through was brutal, even if it was sometimes beautiful. Aether, the aster that makes up your world, Oneroi, started roaring into ours and changing it wildly. Mountains became ducks. Blades of grass became flat bubbles that each screamed a single word when popped. Wild stuff. Whatever you can think of and more. This is the tumult, and it's what I have to put up with daily as I travel through it. It's not an easy context for us to live in. We change, but we change so much slower and within bounds that obey physical laws. To suddenly become the fin of a rainbow fish is not something we can really persist through. So most of us didn't, but some of us did somehow. We call our ancestors the Tumult Nomads. They must have been mad, crazy to make it through, but they did. Maybe with help from folks on your side of the veil. Maybe through grit and luck. Either way, they found oases, bits of our world more resilient to the tumult than others for whatever reason, places that don't change every evening. They weren't permanent, but my great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents found a way to hop from one to another and to shelter from the worst of the tumult. Something happened a little over 4 centuries ago, and a large group of people amassed in what we now refer to as Asgartha, the huge and now mostly stabilized tumult oasis from which humanity will reconquer the world. Asgarthans have better records than my people do. Maybe I am descended from the Lost Tribe, or perhaps even the Exiles, 2 tribes of people that the settlers of Asgartha knew once long ago. Maybe my people were never called to Asgartha. Maybe my family and I are simply fruit of the second sun that orbits the highest peak of our valley's mountains, simply the children of the tumult directly. The capital city of Asgartha is called Arcaster, and, well, the second poem is called The Aster. The Aster. If this is the flood again, then this became the ark when we settled here 30 years before we were concorded into a single people. And my, what a fine ark we have made of this oasis. This place is a shining city in a storm. When I look at you, I see a city worn by its citizens like a lantern wears its light. Be warm and be bright, and see your tribe through these 40 nights, or these 400 years, or this forever ride through the highest tide of life. Himitsu, 3rd Poet Consul to Yzmir, 378 AC, Public Response to Waru, Part 2. I hope it's not forever. And so do they. Those ancient settlers concorded into a single people and began the process of building with, of course, cooperation, but also, interestingly, with a calendar. Oh, how we tried to conquer time. You'll hear me say AC whenever I talk about the dates I've dreamed. That means Anno Concordiae, and to me, it marks the beginning of humanity's attempt to stand against the unknown. These poems were written 10 years after Avcan Rune Heshkari's mandate extension approval in 378 AC, Anno Concordiae. Avcan is the Basileus of Asgartha, the elected ruler. He is generally regarded as a good man by Asgarthans. For most of his life he has been focused on trying to find a way out, into the tumult. Maybe the Rediscovery Endeavor is Avcan trying to become Rune's successor. Who is Rune? Rune, Kunigas, the first High King of Asgartha. If you want to attribute Asgartha's founding to a single individual, he's your guy. It was more complicated than that, of course. You or your kin were involved somehow, I think. There was the Yenny Phoenix, but never mind that for now. Maybe Avcan is thinking back to the Fratricidal War, or the Severance War, or the Three Factions War, and seeing certain patterns repeat themselves, and he wants to do something about it, to break those patterns. Resources are depleting in Asgartha, and they will outgrow the Oasis Paradise eventually. Maybe Avcan really wants to find those of us who are lost in the tumult. whatever the reason, Afghan has made it his life's goal to get Asgartha outside of Asgartha. Not all of them, but some of them, now that it's possible because of the exiles. This initiative to plunge into the tumult is referred to as the Rediscovery Endeavor, and that is the title of the third and last poem of this series. The Rediscovery Endeavor. It does not seem as if the tumult tide is receding from what we're seeing this side of the rampart. We cannot hide forever. We may be too late to recover more than what we have here in Arcaster and its sister cities. It is true that the rural places of Asgartha are not limitlessly supplied, and that we have tried to find our way around this, but we have failed, and we are running out of time. So we turn our eyes to the hills outside that spill themselves into the tumult, which churns the there into the not there, and the not there into the there, like some mad rake tined with drills that dream, which is dragged over all that is seen and unseen, and harrows the earth, or press-flattens it like glass, or creates with the paints of all humans past some art of the heart that grows and grows vast. It is not a safe place. It is undoubtedly a place of pain. But to refrain from casting our chimera into the waves and diving in after is to surrender Arcaster and the caves we've carved into this graven oasis. Waru, we earn our end if the wall is as far as we extend. Himitsu, 3rd Poet Consul to Yzmir, 378 AC. Public Response to Waru, Part 3. This series of 3 poems was written as a public response to Waru, an Ordis exalt who has opposed the spend that has gone into the Rediscovery Endeavor from before the beginning. He came onto the scene at the same time as Avcan, and has always voiced the perspective that we should be focused internally, building on what we have, not risking our most capable and brave citizens on the tumult. For what? Well, to stop it, Waru. To stop it. Or at least to put it to sleep. To nap it. Thanks for listening to Nap It. If you would like to engage with others on this episode or participate in altered events such as deck building contests, tournaments, or our very own Kalan May, consider joining the Pilgrim's Nest Discord, linked in the show notes. If you liked this episode, please share it with the first person you think of when I say the word, was their script their soul, or with whoever. Script, performance, and audio engineering by Justin Hicks. Supported by Sylvia Sullivan as the voice of Camilla. Produced by Justin Hicks. Special thanks to Yoshiaki Mamura, Altered's lore master, and to Equinox for bringing Altered TCG across the veil and into our world. And an extra special thanks to you for listening.